We'll be getting started shortly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to get started shortly. So we're just saying hello to everyone here.
All right, Representative, it's officially 6 o'clock. Representative Commissioner, we're gonna give you guys a cue here to go live here. Give us 1 second, and then. All right, I'm gonna press a button, and then I'm gonna wait 3 seconds, and I'm gonna tell you you're live, Rep, and then you can go. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday. My name is Delia Ramirez, and I'm the State Representative of the 4th House District. And I want to officially welcome you to the long-awaited Latino elected officials environmental town hall. So with me today as my co-host is the one and only Metropolitan Water Reclamation District Commissioner, mouthful, Eira Corral Sepúlveda.
Hello, everyone. Eira Corral Sepúlveda, Commissioner for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'm excited to be here with everyone else on the panel.
So in a little bit, you're going to hear from the rest of the team that's with us today, and we'll have someone moderate, and the commissioner will introduce our moderator in a second. But I just wanted to take a quick second and just personally tell you why, for me, being part of this conversation today is so important. We talk a lot about environment across the state of Illinois, and certainly it is a conversation at the national level that we have to continue to do more and more on. But when it comes to the Latino community, oftentimes it's felt like environmental justice is a conversation we just don't talk enough about. And really the impact that environmental injustice, that not having clean energy, that not being able to have spaces and buildings that have the systems in place to be able to have a kind of clean environment that we need have on our everyday people, and what happens in the workplace and so forth. So today we want to spend some time and really dive into what we've done in Illinois across the different units of government, but also what we need to be doing, and really hearing from you and some of your questions and comments around it. So I'm just really looking forward to a lively conversation, how we continue to move the needle on environmental justice here in Illinois, and how it transcends in the work we do nationally. So I'm excited about that. Commissioner, how about you?
You know, for me, I really have to give a shout out to my team. We had this idea of having a town hall with Latino leaders on the environment. I am aiming to cultivate more spaces where Latino voices can be centered in discussions about environmental policy. As we know, our communities of color have historically and disproportionately been impacted by environmental injustices, not just in Cook County, not just in the United States, globally. So this is really a goal of mine, to center the voices of those that are most impacted in finding policy solutions. The Latino community has leaders in the space. Some of them are here with us today, so I'm excited to get to share the initiatives that we've all been working on and that we envision for the future. But also, most importantly, we want to hear from you, get your feedback on your ideas, your concerns, and your questions. So with that, I want to introduce our moderator, Dany Robles. Dany is with the Illinois Environmental Council. He is the Chicago Energy Coordinator. He also collaborates with grassroots community groups and environmental advocacy organizations to push for equitable and resilient energy policies in Chicago. He's also led the establishment of Somos Sunrise, which is the Latino constituency of the Sunrise Movement. And as a Latino caucus director, for the Young Democrats of Illinois, he also brings youth voices into policy issues affecting the Latino community experiences. Welcome, Dany. Thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your leadership with us.
Well, first off, thank you, Commissioner Corral Sepúlveda, for that incredible introduction, and Representative Ramirez for hosting this incredible panel. Just, as we were talking at the top of the hour, the voices of Latinos is in the environmental space is has been few and far between, but we are growing. We are part of this new movement to bring awareness of the environmental causes, and I'm very honored to be here to represent the Illinois Environmental Council and moderate this exciting conversation with incredible Latino leaders as yourselves, and happy to represent the IEC tonight, both as the Latino and environmentalist that I am, because we are talking to the Latino community today, and want to share a little bit about this work that IEC engages, because it has huge impacts on what we see at the state level, at the county level, at the city level, in regards to environmental policy. And it's been work that it's been going around since 1975. We have advanced sound environmental laws and policies at all levels by bringing together the environmental community to influence decision makers and to make sure that we have clean air, water, and healthy communities. And it's stuff that we have seen this year itself. And part of our work is bringing in member organizations to talk to decision makers at every level, from city, state, and federal. So really happy to be here tonight to talk to some incredible leaders who have been doing the work here in the northwest part of Chicago and across the county. And we're happy to introduce all of y'all. So we're going to take it from the very top of the state level. State Senator Omar Aquino, thank you for coming here tonight. State Senator Aquino is the son of a Chicago public school teacher and Chicago street sanitation worker. Omar Aquino was born and raised in northwest side of Chicago to Puerto Rican parents. As a state senator, he has championed for working families and progressive causes. And during this past session, he supported legislation to address the impacts of climate change that they have on our communities of color, and expanding equity in the emerging clean energy labor sector. He currently serves on several Senate committees in Springfield, including the Energy and Public Utilities Committee. Alongside him is his partner in the district as a state representative, State Representative Delia Ramirez. She represents the 4th House District, where she was first elected in 2018. And she uses her experience as a former social service administrator, community organizer, and policy advocate to bring the voice of working people to Springfield. Representative Ramirez legislative priorities have included housing, healthcare, and child welfare. And in 2021, she joined Speaker Emmanuel Chris Welsh leadership team as assistant majority leader. And currently Representative Ramirez is the vice chair of the housing community. And with them, our other co-host is MWRD District Metropolitan Water Reclamation District Commissioner, mouthful, from now on we're going to call you Commissioner Eira Corral Sepúlveda. Commissioner Eira Sepúlveda was sworn into MWRD Board of Commissioners this past 2020. She's the daughter of Chihuahuense parents. Commissioner Corral Sepúlveda is the first Latina commissioner at the MWRD and one of the youngest in its history. Commissioner Corral Sepúlveda formerly served as the clerk of Hanover Park for 12 years. As commissioner, she has prioritized environmental justice, diversity in government contracting, climate change resilience, and land use. Commissioner Corral Sepúlveda is the chair of the Municipalities Committee and the Public Information and Education Committee. And rounding out our panel tonight is Chicago Alderman Carlos Ramirez-Rosa. Alderman Ramirez-Rosa has been representing the 35th Ward of Chicago since 2015. Elected at the age of 26, he is one of the youngest aldermen and one of the first openly gay Latinos elected to Chicago City Council. He is of Mexican and Puerto Rican descent. Carlos Ramirez-Rosa represents portions of Chicago's Albany Park, Avondale, Hermosa, Irving Park, and Logan Square neighborhoods. And now in his second term, Carlos is working to take on City Hall's big and powerful special interest and put our neighborhoods and working families first. And as a member of the Chicago City Council, Carlos has fought for and won property tax relief for struggling homeowners, strengthened protections for immigrant Chicagoans, and has won policies that preserve and promote affordable housing in our neighborhoods. So this is our panel tonight, y'all. I'm very happy to get us started with this conversation. There's a lot of great questions that we want to ask of all y'all, but we're going to start with the basic one here. What are the environmental initiatives y'all have been working on this past year? And we're going to take it up with State Senator Aquino to start us off, and then we'll go down the list.
Thank you, Dany. Thank you, everyone, all the panelists and everyone who's attending this evening to listen to us speak. So to your question in terms of the policy that we've been working, I think famously the state of Illinois has passed a Clean Energy Jobs Act that was really at the forefront of energy policy in the last year. And I would say, something that is transformative for years to come to really put the state of Illinois, I think, as a trendsetter, as one of the greenest states and one of the states most prepared to kind of go into a green economy for the future. And part of that, which was really exciting, is it's its commitment to really changing transportation in particular as we see it, and it's with all the investments and future investments for electric vehicles and the infrastructure to getting that up and running. Electric vehicles are one of those things that about probably 10 years ago it's like, oh, that's kind of cool, you get an all electric car and whatnot, and now I think the consumer base is really has spoken up. People really don't want to be driving gas powered vehicles for a number of reasons. One is the cost of gasoline and also the impact on our environment. And so to have these alternatives, are really exciting, and to have the state of Illinois is really being one of those to try to push that forward and be a leader in that industry is exciting in many different levels, not only trying to recruit and have some of these companies call Illinois home, like Rivian and others, but also trying to make sure that, as consumers are buying into these types of vehicles, that we have the infrastructure in place so that when we go drive down, I-55 or all the other roadways, we have those places like Wally's that we can stop, and that there's a place to charge our EVs, and not just only for private consumers, but also when we think about transportation and our vehicle use, the private use of semis and other things like that, and that is the future. And even public transportation, being EV and things like that, are really the future. And I think that the state of Illinois is preparing to really be one of the first states to really have a big push on an EV front. And so that's, I think, the biggest thing. But we did a number of different bills in the state, and we do thousands of bills a year. But one of them that I want to highlight is House Bill 633, which is the home garden protection bill, which is almost it's as simple as it's a right to garden bill, which sounds kind of nuts, but there's it put protections throughout the state of Illinois to make sure that anyone that wants to be able to sort of have these hoop gardens and whatnot to sort of garden their provide their own food in their home, and sort of these novel ideas. But really, this is the trend, especially with COVID. People have been getting a more greener thumb, that we don't that we make sure that local governments sort of infringe and put ordinances or whatnot that would not allow for people to do some of those great things that I think that we kind of get back to our roots of gardening for ourselves, of getting self-sustainable and so forth. So those are just a couple of the many bills that things that we've worked on the state of Illinois in the last year, but we're going to continue to there's a lot more work to do, and so we're going to continue to do so, especially making sure that our waterways are protected. When we have such a great water source like Lake Michigan. And so I'll stop there.
Thank you, Senator Aquino. Representative Ramirez, would love to hear what you've been working on.
I've been working on a lot of the things that the Senator has been working on. We typically sponsor each other's legislation in the various chambers. But I just want to add on to the electric vehicles legislation. This is one of the last bills we passed last session, in special session, and the equity pieces of it, and ensuring that jobs for people of color are prioritized in the conversations of environment and clean energy, I think are one of the absolute priorities for the Latino Legislative Caucus. Senator Aquino and a number of colleagues in the Senate and the House really push hard that even as we pass the electric vehicles bill, that as we talked about thousands of jobs that will be coming in the pipeline as a result of it, that Latinos are going to be prepared and ready to be able to take on these jobs that pay living wages. So I just want to kudos to Senator Aquino for all his leadership and work on this bill. It was one of those that we worked really hard, and we were almost getting to the last day of session, special veto session, and I'm really glad we passed. I want to talk just briefly about CEJA, and I know he mentioned that because I think we'll have another opportunity later in the conversation to talk more details of it. But for those of you who don't know, the Clean Energy Jobs Act bill was legislation that we had been working on and advocates had worked on way before I got into office, and it had been years and years of work. And I want to applaud all of the advocates, the Clean Jobs Coalition, and the various organizations, the stakeholders, the constituents who worked so hard to finally pass it this year. It is by far the most innovative environmental justice legislation in the entire country. We now have a pathway to clean energy, 100% clean energy by 2050. We ensure to put equity measures, substantial equity measures, to ensure that people of color are going to not only get trained for the jobs, but access the jobs. And we're going to have reporting mechanisms, so that we ensure that we're tracking that those jobs are actually going to the communities that need it the most and are most impacted by environmental injustice. And I think the third part of it, and again, we can talk more in detail on this couple of 100-page legislation, but the last piece of it that I think is really important is the tough utility accountability requirements we put into this legislation. We all know we got to hold our utility companies accountable and the role that they play as we're pushing for clean environmental jobs and clean energy. And this bill really puts together a list of measures that now we're going to be monitoring and implementing. So I just want to, again, just applaud the work that all the advocates and the legislature did to finally pass this bill earlier this year. So what I do want to mention, in addition to some of the stuff that Senator Aquino talked about, was one particular bill that I think of, which is House Bill 3739. This is the lead service line replacement bill ran by Senator Bush and Representative Lamont Robinson. Why this bill is so important It's the bill that for the first time in history requires every municipality in Illinois to require and develop and execute a plan to replace all the lead service lines. And I think the second piece of that I think is extremely important is putting together measures that prioritizes the areas that need it the most. We all know what those areas are, right? The areas that have the least amount of resources and have the most vulnerable communities. So this bill was actually one of the few strong bipartisan bills we passed this session, but really going to make a difference as we look at ensuring that we have these replacements done and we have safe communities. So I just wanted to really put out a shout out for House Bill 3739. The last one that I would just mention is a groundwater pollution at quarries bill. This was led by Representative Avalar, her first year in Springfield, along with Senator Connor. And what it does, it requires expanded inspections and monitoring to protect groundwater quality at clean construction of demolition debris. So, as the construction and demolition is happening, at sites, this bill will ensure that there's inspections and that we're monitoring the groundwater. So that's going to be something that's going to be implemented this year. And I'm just really looking forward to see how, even in the work that we do around construction, we're really intentional about the environmental justice in it. So I'll leave it there.
Representative Ramirez, and there's a lot of great overlap with the water issues that are coming up front. And Commissioner Eira, this is perfect for you. We'd love to hear about what you've been working on.
Thank you so much, Dany. So the MWRD is a countywide public health agency, and I'm very proud of two accomplishments that we've had in our two main core missions. So our main mission, our first mission is to protect our waterways by cleaning Cook County's wastewater. This includes everything after it leaves your tap. So after you take a shower, after you wash dishes, it also includes industrial waste. So we meet rigorous standards set by the Illinois EPA, and this year these standards increased to further protect our waterways from pollutants. The cleaner our water, the more our aquatic ecosystems can thrive. And in 2021, we achieved a really impressive milestone. Through our waterway protection initiatives, the number of aquatic species in the Chicago area waterway system, which is also known as CAWS, increased by nearly 800%. So let me say that again, 800% since we intensified monitoring efforts in the last few decades. Our waterways eventually flowed down to the Gulf of Mexico. So our daily work in ensuring that our water is clean is really important and has international environmental impacts. Our second mission, and this is a newer mission, we've only been doing this for about 15 years, is to manage stormwater and to mitigate flooding, which is huge because in our region in the Midwest, climate change is bringing us more frequent and more intense rainstorms. Our stormwater management work has also had an immense environmental impact. In 2021 alone, we had MWRD invested nearly $24 million in 41 infrastructure projects throughout Cook County. This created 21 million additional gallons of stormwater retention capacity, and this helped prevent sewer overflows into homes, communities, and waterways. Infrastructure projects also provided opportunities for us to support economic equity, which is very important. In the 41 projects that I mentioned, over 16 million went to minority, women, and veteran-owned business. This helped build economic prosperity in communities like ours. And having diversity in government contracting empowers workers and entrepreneurs to play an active role in our global effort to build greater resilience to climate change. So for us, these are two missions that are very important, and I'm quite proud of the accomplishments that we've had this past year.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Commissioner. And last but not least, we have Alderman Ramirez-Rosa. Alderman, would love to hear about the environmental initiatives you've been working on at the City Council.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dany, for that question. It's so exciting to hear about everything that Senator Aquino and Rep. Ramirez and Commissioner Sepúlveda have been up to in their respective levels of government. In the city of Chicago, there's been a number of key fights as we look to move forward the issue of environmental justice. One of those has been the Water for All Ordinance, which I've been proud to be a chief sponsor of. The Water for All ordinance, when it's implemented, so we haven't yet passed it, will protect the city of Chicago's water from privatization. It will also ensure that poor and working class people have access to water at an affordable rate, because we know that water is life. Having access to water is a fundamental human right. And we've also seen extensive reporting, primarily by WBEZ, which shows the way in which many working poor people do not have access to clean water in the city of Chicago. Another issue that we've been working on is really making sure that we're looking into the feasibility of installing solar panels on all of our City of Chicago and CPS facilities. So that's something we're going to continue the conversation on in 2022. We're proud to have been able to partner with the North River Commission as the 35th Ward Office to educate residents about the state-run Illinois Solar for All program. So thank you so much to our partners in the state for moving that forward. We've been working at a local level to educate folks about the options that are available to them under this state legislation. I'm also proud to have been part of the Native Garden Registry Ordinance. We know that there are so many people in the city of Chicago that do prairie grasses, that do all of the native plants that are home to our little tiny friends, animals and bugs that are part of an important, urban ecosystem. Unfortunately, the city of Chicago ordinance stipulates that if you have weeds that grow over 10 inches, that those are ticketable offenses. So we really wanted to make sure that individuals that weren't just growing weeds, right, that they were actually being intentional in having a native garden, that they had the ability to register that. And that's been something important that we've been working on at the state level. We've also been pushing very strongly to reestablish the Department of the Environment. So this isn't an ongoing fight. We've only seen the addition of one additional staffer under Mayor Lightfoot's administration, that is the Chief Sustainability Officer. But we know that if we're going to really protect our environment and have a city that's focused towards environmental justice and addressing climate change, we need to bring back the Department of the Environment. And then at the local level, at the ward office level, we've done a lot of great things. We've worked to really make sure that individuals are testing their water. So any Chicago resident can request a free lead test kit through the Chicago Department of Water Management. You can call 301 or you can call your local alderman's offices. We've worked really hard at the local level to promote that to our residents. And then we've also done some fun events. We partnered with the MWRD to do a Milkweed for Monarchs event. So if you got some of those milkweed seeds, the fall is a great time. Even the winter is a great time. They just need to freeze and thaw. And when you freeze and thaw those milkweed seeds and they sprout in the spring, you're going to provide a home and you're going to provide food for monarchs. We also partnered to do an Asian carp event where, of course, Asian carp is an invasive species. So we partnered with a local restaurant, El Ranchito on Milwaukee Avenue, to give out Asian carp tacos, which were delicious. And then we've also been working, to preserve our urban canopy. So we've been fighting to really make sure that there are changes in the city of Chicago's Bureau of Forestry. And to that end, we've been fighting to ensure that there's an urban forest advisory board so that, our Bureau of Forestry has the support from experts that they need to protect our urban canopy in the city of Chicago. So I know that's kind of wide ranging, but, at the city level, we really work from local events to get the word out and to get people involved. But of course, we also work on legislation to move these issues forward.
Thank you, Alderman Ramirez-Rosa. Well, first off, I did not get my invite for these Asian carp tacos, so I'm gonna hold you to that one for next time. But I would also want to highlight a few things that, where I'm hearing from all our elected leaders. There's a priority in making sure that working folks are benefiting from the initiatives that we're pushing for in environmental, whether that's work or protections for their water and air quality, and making sure that we are addressing those needs to help the lives of everyday working people. And, there's been a lot of great work that you have all highlighted, but, I think there is still opportunity to do more. So with that, what progress do y'all think still needs to be achieved in environmental policy? And this time I'm going to kick it off to Alder Rosa to start us off, and then we'll move over to Commissioner Eira.
Yes, thank you so much for asking that question. I think that it's really important that all levels of government be working together, right? We know that none of these issues exist in a silo. And, in the context of, our water, obviously, the city of Chicago is taking in the water, right? But then when that water, becomes brown water and is being disposed of, right, where does it go? And so even on that level, right, we have to work closely with the Water Reclamation District. But, I think that, I'm sure my colleagues have a lot more to share.
Thank you, Alder Rosa. Commissioner?
There's a lot of things to be achieved, but in 2022, I'd like to make progress in reforming our land use policies at MWRD. And we are the second largest landowner in Cook County, believe it or not. And the way we approach leasing our land can strongly affect regional and economic development, stormwater management, environmental conditions, and the accessibility to green recreational space. We lease to a lot of different, whether it's government agencies or commercial. So I want to make sure that, we're looking at this from an equitable data-informed perspective, and that we have metrics that guide how we can set forward-looking stormwater management goals, how we assess the quality of each land parcel to maximize the use for either open land or recreation or commercial opportunities. Not every land parcel is the same, so having a sense of what is the best use for each parcel is really important. How we use community-led visioning, and we engage disproportionately impacted communities, build resilience to climate change, and support the vision of our communities and that people have for their neighborhoods and for their future. So for me, land use is on top of my legislative priorities for 2022, and I'm looking forward to fighting for progress in that area.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And we'll turn it over to Representative Ramirez. What are some of these priorities that you're seeing for this upcoming cycle?
I would just add on to a lot of what the commissioner said. We've done some good work. We've certainly made significant progress in this past year in Illinois across the different units of government. And to Alderman Rosa's point, I think one of the first things is that we have to be more intentional about a coordinated strategy, right? And how we amplify the work that's being done at the municipalities or at the city level, at the county, and that there's a real connection between the work at the state and the rest. But I think also the other piece is just coming back to equity. We love to use that word. I feel like we overuse the word, and we think that if we throw it in there in any particular sentence, we've done our work, keep it moving. But really, when we start diving into equity, we still have a long way to go. We still have a lot of communities that don't really have green space. We still have a lot of communities that have challenges or inaccessibility to public transit. And as we legislate and we pass these historic pieces of legislation, we have to be very intentional about monitoring the implementation. Because you could have legislative intent and you can certainly put in all the provisions you'd like, but if organizations, community, and elected officials are not closely monitoring the implementation, we can find ourselves having to file lots of trailer legislation to get to the thing we didn't get done. So I think one of the things that I'm really hoping we will be able to do is to ensure that as jobs are becoming available, as we're providing funds for training, that we are reaching out to the grassroots groups that are doing the work in community to make sure that those that need the work the most, that our folks in our community, our working families, that they're able to access the training programs and that are able to move into these permanent jobs, what we call the future. So I think that's some of the stuff that I want to be able to really focus on. And, and I know we could say there's the infrastructure stuff and then there's the environment, but I think they go hand in hand. we have a lot of work to do to modernize our transportation system. And my hope is that over the next year, we're going to be doing a lot more of that work at the state level, but at every local level. So those are just some things that I think about often.
Yeah, I could not agree more with you. You know, there's an opportunity for us to bring a new future to our state with the modernization of so many layers. And Senator Aquino, I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more about some of the work that we can do to get us closer to that.
Yeah, so one of the things I kept on thinking of the term intersectionality of, like, you know, when we think of environmental issues and so forth, like none of this work, right, is in a vacuum. Like everything impacts everything else, right? And so I think of specifically what we've been going through in the last few years with COVID and health, and how a clean environment is really important for our health, for our physical health, for our emotional health, for our mental health. And, you know, I think about the communities that, you know, the Black and brown communities that, you know, that tend to live closer to places that impact, you know, the asthma numbers that we see in our youth. And, like, you know, there's reasons that, you know, we tend to have higher rates of asthma in our young folks because our air isn't clean. We also are still, to this day, I mean, you know, Representative Ramirez, Leader Ramirez mentioned it, where we're still trying to replace lead lines in many communities. And it's like, these are crazy things that, you know, needs, you know, work and investment and groups like us to make sure, and leaders like us and organizations like IEC and local grassroots organizations to make sure that, you know, that we are pushing for, again, just cleaner policy in general, to make sure that we're at the table. Because as my predecessor liked to say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And it feels like sometimes with a lot of these discussions, unfortunately, we have to elbow our way into, you know, the conversation as Latinos. Like in policy making in general, it's almost like we get pigeonholed to think that there's certain segments of policy that are Latina issues. But environmental policy is a policy for all people, but especially for those people that get impacted on a negative and at a greater level. And that's definitely, you know, our folks. And so I would just kind of piggyback as well what the representative was saying, is that, you know, while you need to make sure people have healthy environments and keeping them healthy, they also need employment. And so as we move to greener jobs and all and so forth, we need to make sure, though, that those opportunities aren't leaving our communities behind. That, you know, we have a workforce available now and in the future that can work into these green jobs. And so that also goes into making sure that, you know, especially in the state of Illinois, which we're a great labor state, that, you know, when, you know, these a lot of our labor unions, to make sure that there's apprenticeship opportunities for our people in our communities, in our areas, for those things. Because as also was, you know, stated earlier, is that infrastructure and environmental policy certainly goes hand in hand. And we know that the state of Illinois has committed many millions of dollars with the, you know, with capital funds. So I think to help improve and our transportation and infrastructure throughout the state, but also to make it, you know, to have environmental sort of thought and green stuff at the forefront. But while we have those dollars there, we also need to make sure that those dollars are coming into our communities, not only with projects, but also to benefit people in their pockets, to have a job and to be able to, you know, to raise their families. So, yeah.
Definitely. I think something that you highlighted is that these issues are not in a vacuum. They're all very much intersectional of each other, whether it's the labor piece to health, to equity. And there's so much opportunity for us to do better for our communities, including the Latino community. But I think there's still some things to dispel, right? There's still some things that the public hasn't full knowledge or awareness. And, you know, I'd like to get a little bit nitty gritty with all y'all on some specific things that y'all are working on related specifically to your district or your position. So we'll start with the commissioner first. You know, relative to other units of government, people may not be as familiar with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. Commissioner, what do you wish people knew about MWRD's environmental impact?
Thank you, Dany. So the water reclamation, you know, for us, it's water reclamation and wastewater treatment, and we deserve more recognition in clean water conversations. I think that's very important. The waterways that we protect at the MWRD are central to the health of our regional environment. Our creeks, our rivers, and our canals, they host a huge variety of plants, fish, amphibians that support species of animals, birds, insects, and more. So the health of our waterways is the health of our environment as a whole. And as a public health agency that cleans water and mitigates flooding, we play a role in some of the most significant environmental policy challenges of today. Regulating industrial polluters, decreasing harmful nutrient excess in our rivers, protecting pollinators such as the monarch butterflies, building infrastructure that's resilient to climate change. The MWRD at every point of its history has been an innovator, and the needs of today require us to be innovative once again. We have to invest in green infrastructure to make nature a part of the solution. The more native plants and trees we have, the more excess rainwater that can be soaked up naturally. But we also need gray infrastructure to face the monster of climate change, to help our communities be able to deal with the sudden increases in intense rain. We continue to work on projects like the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan, we call it TARP, but we also need to make sure that we're not losing sight of investing in green solutions. Achieving clean water is a complex endeavor. It requires action at the local, at the state, and at the national levels. And with a collective effort, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District really plays a very significant role in how we work with all of these agencies.
Definitely agree that people need to understand that there's the different layers of government are so key in communicating with each other. And with that, it's also about kind of aligning how do we use the money that is introduced into our budgets? So with that, I want to turn this question over to Alderman Ramirez-Rosa. Alderman, last year, the City Council passed a historic $16.7 billion budget. What were some of the investments that the city is making towards environmental justice, and what were you most proud of advocating for?
Thank you so much. That's a really great question. The city was able to use the American Rescue Plan dollars to make some pretty big investments in comparison to other years to address climate change, to make sure that we have environmental justice for our communities. So in the 2022 budget, as a result of the American Rescue Plan dollars, those were the dollars that the federal government gave us to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. The city of Chicago in the 2022 budget will invest $87 million towards environmental justice initiatives and $101 million in community climate investments. And these are going to be monies that are going to go out over the next 3 years. And we're going to focus on energy efficiency and renewable investments. And this is going to include $16.1 million for the Chicago Department of Public Health. This is going to help them with environmental health and permitting. So they're going to make sure that they're inspecting to ensure that the city of Chicago's environmental protection laws are being enforced. And they're also going to be doing enforcement around the permits that are being administered by the city of Chicago. We've also been working on flood mitigation and green alleys in low-income neighborhoods. We know as a result of climate change that the city of Chicago is seeing record rainfall. I'm sure Commissioner Sepúlveda can share with us everything that she knows about that. But that means that we need to fix our infrastructure to make sure that it can deal with this record rainfall. And that includes green alleys, alleys that aren't just black asphalt that puts the water in people's yards and in people's garages, but instead that are permeable, right? That have the capacity to really deal with the water that's coming in. The city of Chicago is also going to use these funds to plant trees all throughout the city of Chicago. And then we're also going to be able to do more outreach to really make sure that there is more recycling happening in the city of Chicago. So there's also going to be look at what does our recycling look like in the city of Chicago, and how can we really make sure that we're reducing the amount of waste that's going into the landfill. And then lastly, part of this funding is also going to go towards completing the citywide expansion of the Divvy bike share system. So of course, as you know, the city of Chicago has a partnership with Divvy to make sure that there's accessibility to bikes on the far southwest and the far northwest sides. During this pandemic, many people have struggled to be able to find a bike that is affordable for them. And Divvy, of course, has helped fill that need that exists. So the full expansion will include 16,500 bikes and more than 800 stations covering all the city's neighborhoods. So these investments were only made possible because of people that have been fighting to tell the city of Chicago to do more on the front of climate change. Of course, we know that it is not enough, but I think that it's a good start. And it was a start that was initiated as a result of people pushing consistently to really get the city to do more. And so I'm glad that myself and others were able to fight to get these types of investments included in the 2022 budget as a result of the federal funds that we received.
Thank you, Alderman Ramirez-Rosa. There's a lot of great questions coming in the chat, and we're going to get to them in 1 second. I think I want to highlight something that Alderman Ramirez-Rosa mentioned about making sure we're holding the building sector accountable to renewables as part of the budget that the city council just recently passed. But a lot of that would not be possible if we hadn't had some great work happening at the state level in passing a comprehensive clean energy law in 2021. The Climate and Equitable Jobs Act was monumental in making sure that we have opportunities to decarbonize our energy sector. We'll be closing down coal plants by 2045 and providing jobs and opportunities for so many different people, including Latinos throughout the entire state. And we have State Representative Delia Ramirez and State Senator Omar Aquino to thank for that. And I would love to turn this question to both of you. If you guys can share more about what it took to get this effort passed, and what important provisions should people know about the Clean Energy Jobs Act?
Sure. You want me to, sorry, you want to start and I can jump in?
Sure, I'll just say that, as a member of the Latino caucus and also the Green caucus, I've been co-chair of the Green caucus for a few years now. The great thing of that is being able to make sure that, we had folks, colleagues of ours, leaders, in our communities that were at the table. And so specifically in terms of colleagues, we had, Senator Celina Villanueva, who, was a part of the negotiation, Senator Cristina Castro, I believe. I will let the leader in the House discuss who in the House was there, because I'll be honest, I don't remember everyone, so I don't want to leave people out. And I apologize that my dog is trying to bark right now, so hopefully you don't hear too much in the background. But it's important. Those things are important because it's not only those individual members that are at the table, but it's also our communities and organizations that come from our communities that are made sure to be at the table. So so having Senator Celina Villanueva ensure that organizations from Pilsen and the backyards and others that have been working on issues like fighting the Petco issues and things like that, that those type of organizations were lead into having being a part of these discussions. And so and so forth for the Senator Castro as well, to make sure that the voice of not only people in the suburbs, but specifically Latinos and Latinas in the suburbs were taken into account. And that because this legislation, obviously, but all legislation in the United States is far-reaching, right? Especially something like this, which is such a transformative piece of legislation that I think will have impacts not only for this upcoming year, but for decades to come. So I think that I'll just kind of frame it in that way, that in terms of this discussion, what I think what we can all, as people that voted on it, like the leader and myself and others, can feel that there was people at the table that that represented our communities, that were strong voices, to make sure that, you know, that not only on an equitable piece of, you know, of people getting employed, that our businesses were also considered, and our entrepreneurs, that, you know, Latinos have a huge impact on the overall economy of the state. And so, you know, as both consumers and as folks that, you know, are job creators. And so we have to make sure that all those people are part of those discussions. And I would say in this discussion, they absolutely were. It certainly took a while to get it passed, but I think finally when it did, there's a lot more communities and folks that I think that were happy with the result and that can be proud of that legislation than not. So I'll let the leader continue on.
Thank you, Senator. So I would just highlight a few other pieces of this legislation, because I know I started talking a little bit about that at the beginning. So I said at the beginning that it establishes a goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. It also shuts down the state's largest polluter and the 7th largest polluter in the entire country. This legislation does that. So I think we're going to see the immediate impact of what that's going to look like for our communities across the state of Illinois in doing so. It drives out state to 40% renewable energy by 2030, 50% by 2040, and then you see the renewable energy by 2050 completely. So I just wanted to bring some of that. And the equity pieces, right? You know, Senator Aquino is right. Oftentimes in Springfield, you know, and we do this in legislation, we have conversations and we put some loose language around equity. And it would have been really easy for that to be the case on this bill. But part of why it took so long to pass is because the Black Caucus and Latino Caucus were very intentional, one, working together, but also working within its own caucuses and hearing from community and hearing from organizations across the state of Illinois who have seen the disparity in hiring and employment, particularly in these jobs for our communities. So there's no other state that has passed legislation like this that requires reporting on the renewable energy projects, let alone the mandated goals that this bill has. So you heard me say that part of what we're going to be doing now is monitoring, right? That as this reporting is happening, that we're really monitoring closely that these jobs and these trainings and apprenticeship programs are going to the communities that we said in this bill had to ensure they were prioritized. The other thing of that I think is really important is also like how is it that small businesses or individuals that want to get into the sector actually get in? We can go on and on about cannabis, right? And equity there, and we won't go into that rabbit hole because we'll be here for 3 hours. But as we talked about this particular sector and legislation around the equity, there are 2 new inclusive financing mechanisms. It's a green bank for accessible capital and a grant program for seed funding. So one of the things that we want to make sure that happens is that our everyday community, our working class families, our individuals who have been most marginalized have access and reduce the barriers to enter into this growing minority owned renewable energy business. So that is a piece that we're going to also be closely monitoring. I know someone on the chat had asked if, you know, what could we be expecting around the advocacy and championing? We will be looking at that closely because this bill has really specifics on how to make that happen and the reporting. So just wanted to mention some of those pieces as additional components of the Clean Energy Jobs Act bill that we passed this past session.
Those are some very major pieces that, you know, I think it's going to take a bit of work from advocacy groups along with some of our elected officials to continue communicating that to our communities, because I think sometimes we forget that not everyone is reading through the bylines and really like digging through all the inner layers. Like you mentioned, Representative Ramirez, it's 900 pages of a lot of great information, but I think there's still some work that I see and other groups can do to make sure that people are aware of these pieces. And I do want to turn it over to some Q&A from the audience. I do also want to highlight that unfortunately Senator Aquino had to step away, so we will ask the questions to the panelists left on the table. And one of the first questions that I do want to bring up is Jose has been kind of concerned about the Latino community's representation. 60% of the workforce is Latino in Illinois. And more importantly, as we see the Latino population growing in Illinois, we aren't seeing the full representation just yet. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what would you tell the young Latinos on how to get involved and help bring the change we need to our community. So I'll start with our hosts, Representative Ramirez, and then turn it over to Commissioner Corral Sepúlveda.
I will just give a quick sentence and then I want to hear from the commissioner. I think you should be demanding and demanding more. And when after you've demanded more, demand even more. I think this is exactly how we're going to be able to push the fold and really get the equity we're talking about. Because for too long, it's been crumbs that the Latino community has seen as it pertains to jobs, as it pertains to leadership, as it pertains to the opportunity to really build up and scale up their businesses. And we as elected officials and those in spaces to be able to push and champion have to hear those demands loud and clear. Commissioner?
Thank you. So let me just say that I'm really excited to hear, Representative Ramirez noted earlier that there was a green bank and a seed for funding for CJA initiatives. I think that's going to be crucial. So the fact that we have that we are able to push that forward is going to be very important so that we can create opportunities for entrepreneurs in the green space. And there's opportunities to collaborate with what we're doing at MWRD too. For me, creating a career pipeline that works with our young people that are either in 7th, 8th grade, high school, and college, that is building the generation of tomorrow so that we can have people at MWRD being employed. But also, I'm part of the Equity and Construction Committee, and we're working to make sure that we're working with labor and reaching out so that our Latino community is being engaged and included in all of the wonderful new opportunities that are going to come forward with the new infrastructure funding that's being brought by both the state of Illinois and also the federal government. So having a career pipeline in jobs that are green jobs and that are focused on infrastructure is crucial for our community, because that is where the future is going. That is where we're going to have well-paid, sustainable jobs for the long-term future. So for those of you that are either incoming to the workforce, or you're looking to develop some skills for the future, those are two spaces where I really encourage you to push forward and get to know a little bit more, look at your community college and see what programs they have, because they do have quite accessible programs.
Definitely, I think, and it's only going to grow, especially with the provisions to establish technology hubs in the near future.
Right.
And well, I want to turn it over to Alderman Ramirez-Rosa with the same question. Alderman Ramirez-Rosa, what do you tell the young Latinos who are looking to get involved, and how can we help bring the change we need for our communities, given everything that Latino population is going through right now?
Well, thank you all for that question. I did a little venue change, but what I'll say is that, I think that if you feel passionate about something, reach out to decision makers in your community. Doesn't matter if you're 10, 12, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, you have a voice, and it's critically important that you make your voice heard. So send an email, make a phone call. Many elected officials hold open office hours. Take some time to visit them, to talk to them about the issues that you're seeing in your community. And then if you see someone in your community, whether it's a nonprofit leader or a community leader, an organizer, an elected official that's doing work that you really think is critically important, or that's along the lines of what you're passionate about, get involved. I got my start in politics by being really angry that workers at Target and Walmart were not making a living wage. I thought that that was preposterous. It is preposterous. And at that point in time, in 2007, when I was a senior in high school, the city of Chicago passed a big box living wage ordinances. So stores like Target and Walmart would have to pay a living wage. And then Daley and a group of aldermen overturned that ordinance. And I was so angry about that. I was so angry that when I found out that my local alderman had flip-flopped on the issue, he initially had voted for the living wage and then he voted to repeal the living wage ordinance. I went and found an opponent who was supported by, the labor movement, and I started knocking doors with that candidate. And that was really my first foray into electoral politics. It was actually my first paid job working on a campaign, because eventually they said, hey, you do a really great job knocking doors. How about we, bring you on as a paid staffer? So, don't be afraid, don't be shy. Our movements can only succeed with people coming out and doing that labor of love. So if you're passionate about environmental issues, I'm sure if you reach out to Dany, right, or to his counterparts, they would love to get you involved with organizing efforts in your community. If you're passionate about other issues in your community, look to the people that are already doing that work and connect with them, because I'm sure they'll be able to either provide you with opportunities to get involved, or alternatively, they may be able to point you in the right direction.
Dany, I'm going to say real quick, I'm going to take this opportunity for a shameless self-promotion. I'm hiring, so if you are interested in issues that deal with environmental policy and reaching out to community, I'm hiring a part-time special projects. I think Julie will include the information in the chat, but if you know of anyone that's interested, I am looking. We're going to be looking for interns soon, I hope. This
Excellent.
COVID thing gets a little bit more stable. I think we're going to be able to get interns this year.
Yes. Well, I think that there's a lot of great people on this call that are looking to get involved. I keep seeing it. I'm going to turn one last question for everyone, and let's see if we can keep it to a minute answer. And we're going to pitch it over to Representative Ramirez for the top of the hour. How can we provide leadership when it comes to connecting climate justice to the rights of refugee, immigrants, and migrant justice? It's a tough one. See if we can keep it.
A minute in a deep conversation that could have been a panel itself, right? I think that we have to recognize, first of all, that when it comes to environment, it impacts absolutely every facet of our life, and particularly for those that are most impacted and marginalized. So for me, I think, when we talk about environment, it certainly impacts us when it comes to immigration. It certainly impacts us when it comes to refugees and the impact, right, of environment in their own communities, in their own countries, but also the justice piece of it, because I don't think we talk about it enough. So I would really invite folks to work with Dany more, because we were at a rally just a few weeks ago talking exactly about that. What citizenship for all means and what environmental justice means at the federal level. So please contact Dany and get involved, and keep reminding decision makers that there is truly an intersection in it, and you expect of us to lead in that way.
Thank you, Representative Ramirez. We're going to turn it over to Alderman Ramirez-Rosa, and then we're going to close it out with Commissioner Corral Sepúlveda. Alderman, same question. How do we provide leadership connecting climate justice to refugee, immigrant, and migrant justice?
Well, we know that climate change is already creating refugees. And it is just a travesty that, it's the industrialized world, the quote unquote first world, that is really driving the emissions that are leading to climate change. And then it is people, in the quote unquote third world, in the developing world, in the global south, who are facing the brunt of the impact. And oftentimes their government and their economies are least capable to deal with the negative impacts that climate change is creating. So I think that the global north, right, the countries with so much wealth, who historically have also benefited so much from, colonization, they have a responsibility to climate change refugees. And if you are someone that does not like the idea of immigrants coming to your country, well, then you should really, really, really get involved in addressing climate change. That's what I would tell the right wing. That's what I would tell conservatives is, look, if you don't want to see immigration as a result of climate change, then do the work necessary to address climate change. Because people, some people obviously immigrate because they want to, but more than often people feel forced. Right, they feel forced either because of conflict, right, or because of lack of food or lack of opportunities. So I think that it's really critically important that we have that global perspective, that we understand that no human being is a silo, that we are all interconnected, and that what happens in one country impacts another country. And I think that it's critically important that we understand that only through coming together globally will we address this issue of climate change. But as we recognize the necessity of us to come together, at the same time, we also have to recognize that certain countries and certain people who have benefited more and who have done more damage to the environment have a greater role to play here.
Very much aligned with you that there is a big portion of migration to this piece. I do one selfless promotion. I've been working with the Illinois Green New Deal Network to help put together a labor, climate, and immigration conversation later this month, and would love to connect with the commissioner's office and all the electeds office on making sure we get that information out there to y'all, so y'all can join us in learning more about how all this is intersecting. But Commissioner, would love to turn it over to you to answer this final question and also to close us out for tonight.
This is a challenging topic to do in such a small time, but I would echo what my colleague said about acknowledging the global interconnectedness that we have in addressing climate change. But I also want to highlight the unique place that we have in the Chicagoland area. Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes are such a valuable resource to us as a region. And it is anticipated that if we continue in the same trajectory, it will be a place that will really anchor a lot of migration internationally and also domestically. So we will be a source of fresh water. The responsibility that we have in protecting Lake Michigan as a clean source of fresh water is incredibly important. And more so as we start thinking about development. What does development mean in the future for our Chicagoland area, and how can we keep it sustainable, not just from an environmental perspective, but also from a density perspective, what we can absorb. Even in the state of Illinois, we are seeing communities that are very much challenged by having access to clean water. In Cook County, we've seen it recently, even with our existing system. We also see that in communities like Joliet, that are a little bit farther away. So from us in the MWRD, making sure that our region, the places that are within our jurisdiction, are practicing sustainable development is very important, because any new development needs to be able to really take into account how they process water, how they have retention ponds, all these different tools that are really so important to making sure that we are prepared for a future that frankly, inevitably is going to present some significant challenges, even if we continue to make the progress that we're making now. And even with some of the measures that have taken with CEJA, for example, at the national level, we need to continue those. So, that will segue to a closing statement of saying, we really need to be so incredibly focused. And I put in the chat, to be consistently persistent. We need to really show up, and that is one of the greatest things that we can do as local or state or national or global citizens. We need to show up with consistency and persistence because that's when people start to listen to us. People would not, these policies would not have moved forward if it had not been for the people that showed up. And so we need to show up for ourselves as much as we need to show up for our planet as well. Because, you know, Mother Earth is going to be okay. My son asked me the other day, Mommy, you know, is the planet going to end? And I said, no, the planet's going to be fine. It's us that we have to be worried about. Mother Nature will find a way, you trust. But we have to be sure that we're working collaboratively with Mother Nature to ensure a future that has harmony. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight, for being a part of this panel. It was important for us to create a space where Latinos could have a voice in engaging on issues of environmental policy. Please continue to stay tuned. I believe our team has included in the chat where you can find us on social media, our websites and emails. Thank you all very much. Have a great night.